I raised my hand when Mark asked for someone to be optimistic. I'm going to give you a very optimistic talk based on facts that I think will be interesting to you. But first, 2 weeks ago, I did a radio show here in Las Vegas, and the host was amazed when he learned that I was coming here to a science meeting in Vegas. He said, they're not having any meetings here. I said, well, Jane Orient and Jeremy Snavely and his wife are putting out a meeting, and nothing has changed. And I think right now, let's give a round of applause for Dr. Orient and Jeremy and his wife. They've broken the mold in meeting planning, and the programs is always fantastic. At this very moment in time, I should be sitting behind home plate as a catcher in a baseball game in the Cleveland Indians Stadium. Every DDP meeting I ever missed was because I was playing baseball. And at 84, if they let me catch baseball games, that comes before even a DDP meeting. It's incredibly exciting. And I should actually be there right now. But when Paige Moore, the daughter of one of my great mentors, Ray Kasman, wrote me an email saying she was looking forward to seeing me, and I said, no, I won't be there. I'm playing baseball in the Cleveland Indians Stadium, which I do every summer. She wrote me just a very sweet email about how much she and her family and her brother, Bill Kasman, and Craig and Carolyn would miss me because we always sit together when I come. And I was really touched by her email. And then the next day, I got some information from the Cleveland Indians. The field was ours. We could still play baseball there as we do every summer. However, we could not use the dugouts. We could not use the locker room. And if we were not at bat or in the field, we had to sit in the stands with a mask on. All of a sudden, baseball got less exciting for me, and I wrote Paige back and I said, your lovely email has changed my mind along with the new rules playing baseball, and I will be here. So I wrote Jane Orient a letter, and I said, I'm coming, and under these circumstances, if perhaps some speaker doesn't show up, I would like to fill in. I just have a new book that came out a couple months ago with my co-author, the brains of the operation, Terry Ciccone, called A Hitchhiker's Journey Through Climate Change, and I could easily put a talk together on wind and solar. And 2 days later, I got an email from Jane saying, you're on, that Jerry couldn't get out of Canada, but I'm glad to hear that he is getting out of Canada and he'll be on tomorrow morning. But it is exciting to be here, and I told Mark and everybody in the room here that I have optimistic things to say. I am one of the world's leading optimists. I can prove that. Probably half the people here know that I'm a world-class skydiver. I've been jumping for 42 years, and I hold a world record for continuous months jumped in a cold climate, which is 34 years and 11 months. That's 419 months in Columbus, Ohio. That's 30 winters. I think that qualifies me as the world's leading optimist. Optimism pays. Every time I jump out of a plane, I'm absolutely positive I'm going to land comfortably on the earth. And I have for 1,500 times. And about a dozen people before I'm finished here will come up to me today or tomorrow and say, Jay, are you still jumping? And I always kind of make a joke out of it. I look at my watch and say, oh gosh, I haven't jumped since last Sunday. And I think they're all wishing I would quit. Well, the same problem has occurred on the drop zone as in the Cleveland Stadium. We now have to wear a mask everywhere on the field and part of skydiving is just hanging around with your buddies. We have to wear a mask in the plane. Obviously, we're allowed to take it off as we leave the plane. That's taken the fun out of skydiving for me, so I have decided that on Tuesday, next Tuesday, I will officially retire from skydiving. It's the 42nd year anniversary of my first jump, and because of my insane record of 419 consecutive months in a cold climate of jumping, I'm fairly well known, and so there'll be a mention in Parachutist magazine that I am retiring from skydiving. I don't need to tell you, my wife is so thrilled. She's been so nice to me the last few weeks since I decided. All right, I want to tell you what Mark Morano was really talking about. I want to boil down his talk into a single quote, what we're looking at. In 1959, Nikita Khrushchev, in a recorded interview with the then Secretary of Agriculture, Ezra Taft Benson, said the following words that many of you have read or heard. They're worth repeating because that's what this is all about. Khrushchev said, "We cannot expect the Americans to jump from capitalism to communism, but we can assist their leaders in giving Americans small doses of socialism until they suddenly awake to find they have communism." That is what this is all about. It is all about living under socialism. Now, I am an optimist. I am convinced that Mr. Trump will get another 4 years. I'm convinced that the man on the street, Main Street America, has not liked living under socialism the last 8 months, have not liked having their freedoms taken away, have not liked seeing rioting in the streets supported by their politicians, and that in the quiet of the voting booth, they are not going to vote for an entirely socialist administration. Now, optimism pays. There are 80 days, I believe, until November 3rd. I am going to be excited, happy, and upbeat for all of those 80 days. If I'm wrong, you can't take those 80 days away from me. Optimism pays. And one of the biggest mistakes of pessimism that people do not understand, most people are pessimistic because they think if the outcome is very negative, having been pessimistic in the previous days, weeks, or months, the negative output will not land on them so difficult. They will be able to accept it. And they are 100% wrong. The negative outcome puts you on the bottom of the barrel, and there is a limit to how miserable you can be. And by being miserable the next 80 days because you think Mr. Trump is going to lose is not going to make it any better for you on November 3rd if he does lose. Optimism pays. In a sense, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As you all know, pessimism very definitely is. So I am very optimistic. One other comment on Mark's talk about the lithium. Most of you are familiar with two dystopian novels. About half of you have read either Brave New World, written in 1932 by Aldous Huxley, or, of course, George Orwell's 1984. Both of them are amazingly prescient, horribly depressing. If you haven't read them, I don't know, you might find an old movie that's a little easier to watch. But in Brave New World, they managed society with a form of lithium. It hadn't been invented in 1932. But Aldous Huxley's novel, they gave everybody a little blue pill called a sima pill, and they became passive. And that's how they control the population. They did allow, if you objected and didn't want to take the pill, you could move to an island and not live under their despotic administration. And of course, in 1984, you're aware they wrote history, eliminated history. George Orwell in 1946 predicted everything that's going on in the streets of Black Lives Matter, all of the toppling of statues. It's astounding to me that people can be that smart. Why am I optimistic? If they were to win, they cannot do what they talk about doing. They can only fail. And so most of my talk, titled The Folly of Wind and Solar, is built upon that. I'm going to give you some information that, in a sense, you might already know, but you've never expressed it, you've never heard it. But it will make you feel optimistic. It will shock you to know that wind and solar can have no value to any electric grid in the world. Now, I am not talking about solar panels on your roof. I'm not talking about wind turbines in your backyard that are yours. I'm talking about every solar farm and wind turbine array that is considered part of an electric utility's full capacity. The world has been duped by everything with regard to wind and solar. And it is the crux of the Green New Deal. We must eliminate fossil fuels, keep them in the ground, and get all our energy from the sun and the wind. It cannot be done. So if they are elected, they will meet the most colossal failure that they do not understand. I will be able to explain it to you very simply, and it will surprise you. They think they're going to have batteries to back up when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, my energy mentor, Howard Haynes, will be here talking about batteries. I met Howard when he wrote his first book, The Solar Fraud, and he's been my go-to guy any time of day and night when I need information on energy, and he always comes through. And in that regard, he puts out a newsletter that, if you're not subscribing to the Energy Advocate, it comes out every month. It's 4 pages long. The type's a little small. Most of you already wear glasses, so that's okay. And he goes through energy stuff, and once in a while it'll be over your head. But this month's issue, which just came out a few days ago, he goes through the Green New Deal, kind of, in a sense, what I'm going to do. I had already written my speech. By the way, my entire talk today is written out, and you will get it tomorrow. Jeremy's going to copy it and hand it out to all of you tomorrow, so anything that you miss, it will all be there. But I had already finished the talk when Howard's newsletter came, and in the newsletter, he decided to quote the bulk of the Green New Deal. And he labeled sections of it A, B, C, D, E, and then he went through and explained why it can't happen. And that was basically my entire talk, although my focus is a little different than his is. Basically, he charges postage for it, whatever that is, it's peanuts, and I cannot recommend it too highly. And it's always fun. If you know Howard, Howard is always fun. You ever ask him any question at all, you'll get an answer with a joke involved. The guy's absolutely amazing. Howard is a retired physics professor from the University of Connecticut, living in Pueblo, Colorado, and still working and teaching there and so on. When I said I could fill in this talk, it was because I had just finished this book called A Hitchhiker's Journey Through Climate Change. My wife, we've been married 30 years, and with her as an associate editor of everything I do, we've done about a dozen books, but all told, my name is on the spine of 31 books. My first one was in 1978, and there has never been a year that I wasn't working on a book. There is also no single book with my name alone on the spine. My wife calls me Tom Sawyer. If you read Tom Sawyer, he got friends to pay him to paint his fence. I've been doing that my entire career. My wife objects to it. She just thinks I'm taking advantage of people. But while I'm generally not as smart as any of the people that collaborate with me, I know how to get books published. And McGraw-Hill and John Wiley have published essentially all of them. And I have never in my life sold a book. Most authors will give a talk and have a bunch of books and sign them. I've never done that in my life. It's just not in me. McGraw-Hill and Wiley have done just fine with my books. But 20 of my books are here and out on the table, but I just gave them to DDP and told them charge anything they want for them and keep the money. We wrote this book basically for parents and grandparents to learn about climate change in a relatively easy manner so they could talk to their children, all of whom have been brainwashed, as you know. So it was fairly easy to draw from the book and prepare this lecture on the electric grid. Now, most people have a motive. You don't ever write books to make money. I'm fairly sure that I've calculated all the time I've spent in 42 years on 31 books. And if you divide all the royalties by the hours I put in, I'm approaching minimum wage. I haven't got there yet, but I'm approaching it. But what you do enjoy is seeing your name on a book. And now I'm hoping to get my name on a electrical engineering rule of thumb. We came up with it out of the book, and it's in the paper that you'll get tomorrow. And I will describe the rule of thumb. And it is so logical, and it is the focus of my optimism. You should all be shocked. At the same time, I'm going to tell you something as simple as 2 + 2 = 4, and you're going to say to yourself, well, obviously, I knew that, but I never expressed it, and I never heard it said or put in print. And so here is our rule of thumb. Well, actually, because my wife hounded me when I was working on it that I should put my co-author, Terry Ciccone, first. So it's the Ciccone-Lehr rule of thumb. She claims it's the first modest thing I've ever done in my life. And, maybe she's right, but here it is. In any community electric grid, where wind and solar are part of the grid's capacity, there must be a fossil fuel plant producing equal or greater amount of energy than that which is derived from wind and solar, operating 100% of the time at the ready to go online in seconds when the sun does not shine and the wind does not blow. So I am telling you that there is not an electric grid in the world that has reduced the amount of fossil fuel in use. They have all, in fact, increased the use of fossil fuel. They have not decreased carbon dioxide emissions 1 part per million. They have actually increased them because you're always backing up with coal or natural gas, and in a few countries like Japan with oil. It is so obvious, it is amazing that everybody is not aware of it. But the world has never woken up to it. Though I have read it in other books, not as a rule of thumb that I hope to have my name on, but just as a comment by an author that understood energy. Well, why have you not heard this from electric utilities? Every electric utility loves wind and solar. Think about it. It allows them to build extra fossil fuel capacity, charge more for their electricity. So you'll never find any electric utility against it. And it's required in 29 states and the District of Columbia. 29 states and DC require all electric utilities to have some percentage of their capacity with solar, photovoltaic cells, or wind turbines. And yet, the public has not woken up to the fact that they add nothing. They produce no electricity. They have to be backed up 100%. So they're of zero value. It's absolutely astounding. Now, Germany went whole hog on wind and solar. Those of you who speak better German than I, they call it the energy wind. Could anyone pronounce that properly for me? Say it again. Okay. I'll stumble over it, so I won't repeat it, but thank you for that. Anyway, right after the tsunami in Japan, Germany went whole hog, shutting down most of their nuclear plants and investing in wind and solar. They have hurt their economy. Their energy bills are now 3 times ours. Most of you live places you're paying somewhere between 10 and 14 cents a kilowatt hour. Germany, 30 to 35 cents. Germany's building most of their new factories in the United States now to take advantage of our cheaper energy prices. They are in terrible shape. And of course, they're using more coal than ever. They're using more coal than ever because they found out that they can't operate an electric utility on wind and solar. They've got to back it up. And it gets even worse. There are 2 types of fossil fuel plants. A simple power plant and a combined cycle power plant. A simple power plant burns coal or natural gas and heats water, creates steam, and turns a turbine, and you get electricity. A combined cycle plant has 2 turbines. One operated from the steam from heating it with the coal or natural gas, and another turbine that takes the waste heat from the burning of coal and natural gas, and uses it to make more steam and turn a second turbine. They are way more efficient than simple plants. They're running 60 to 70% efficient, where a simple plant is only half as efficient, and all of the backup plants can only be simple. They have to be simple because they have to be ready to go online in seconds when the renewable wind and solar doesn't operate. And the operation of a combined cycle plant is too complex to do that correctly. So it's just a double whammy. Now, you heard Mark quoted Michael Schellenberger's apology for being a leftist activist. I'll talk about 2 people who are the ultimate leftist activists who have, for one reason or other, turned to our side. I'll mention Michael first because he mentioned it. The very best environmental book ever written, with no peer, is Apocalypse Never by Michael Schellenberger. He spent 20 years as an environmental activist. As Mark said, he went and worked with the Sandinistas in South America. I mean, this guy was a total radical. And he says rather amazingly, honestly, in the book, that he changed his attitude because, like most radicals, liberals, progressives, his life was in the toilet. He was depressed. His relationships were going bad. There's a beautiful picture in the book of his wife, who I assume is his second wife, based on the comment that he printed about changing from being an activist, a liberal activist, to finding out the honesty about what's going on in the environment. He has spent at least the last 5 years traveling the world investigating every environmental issue imaginable, though, of course, the focus is on the climate change scare. He writes like a novelist. Very difficult to put the book down. It's absolutely amazing. To prove how much research he did something that astounded me. If you read a lot of books that are technical, you'll always find every chapter is backed up with notes where the author got the information. Michael's book, Apocalypse Never, has 1,220 notes, and I read every one of them. And they're not notes like I talked to Joe and he told me. Every note, relates to some published thing in which he got the information. It's absolutely an amazing book. Everybody should get it and buy it. He's still a liberal. He's still, I guess Bjorn Lomborg now, ranks climate change low on the totem pole, but he still believes that man is in control of the climate. Michael Schellenberger still believes that, but it doesn't get in the way of the terrific material in the book. The other turncoat is more amazing to you if you don't know yet. How many of you are unaware? Just raise your hand if you're unaware that Michael Moore made a new movie called Planet for the Humans. Raise your hand if you've never heard of it. Okay, good. Most of you have not. Somewhere on the internet, you can find his film, Planet for the Humans. Why would the ultimate leftist, who's made millions spewing lies, make a movie turncoating on the leftists? I don't know his motives. I expect it was for money or get back in front of the public. But he hired a young tree hugger by the name of, I've lost his name, Jeff Gibbs. Jeff Gibbs, a filmmaker and a leftist, to travel all over the country to look at renewable energy and see what the real story is. And I mean, he destroys. The movie's an hour and 40 minutes long, but you'll be on the edge of your seat. It does not drag. It does not drag at all. And it was on the internet, and then, of course, they took it off the internet when they realized it was Michael Moore, but not the normal Michael Moore. You can find it in any number of places. Planet for the Humans. It is really worth watching. They interviewed people. It's all on the ground. I mean, it's all real action. It's not people giving opinions. They went up to General Motors to a press conference on the Volt electric vehicle, and where the lady who was running the press conference explained how the Volt works. And the Mr. Gibbs said, "Where does the energy come from?" And they said, "From the the outlets in the building at the General Motors headquarters." Well, where does that energy come from? And the woman had no clue, other than it came from the East Lansing Power Company. When asked how do they create power, she assumed it was gas or coal, but she didn't really have a clue. They went to Vermont, where environmental zealots were clearing off a mountain, denuding an entire mountain in Vermont of trees so they could put up wind turbines. They then turned the trees into wood chips and shipped them off to Europe as biomass. When asked, why are you destroying the countryside here in Vermont to put up wind turbines, the response in the movie was, Well, they do that in West Virginia to mine coal. So what's any different than for us to do it in Vermont to put up wind turbines? They went to a zoo that was called the Elephant Zoo Poo. They claimed the zoo was run entirely on elephant poo, burning biomass. When they interviewed the elephant keeper, he said they don't get enough energy out of the zoo poo to even run the whole elephant portion of the zoo, let alone the whole zoo. One of the most amazing stories is a young professor from Northwestern University who's an expert on photoelectric cells. The environmental progressives will tell you what can be easier to produce than the glass or plastic or whatever you want to call it that creates a photoelectric cell, because sand is everywhere. Would you be shocked to know that there is no sand used in the manufacture of any photoelectric cells? They need pure quartz with no impurities, and they have to burn it with coal. They have to cook it to 1800 degrees to get it to where they can actually make a photoelectric cell. So they went around, actually the world, as I'll get into in a moment, to show you the environmental destruction of creating solar cells and wind turbines. They went to Ivanpah. Raise your hand if you have no idea, have never heard the word Ivanpah. Jeremy, I'm surprised. Okay, it's okay. Ivanpah was the largest solar operation in the country. I guess to a certain extent it still is. $2 billion. And Ivanpah is run by mirrors who move with the sun. They all move electrically with the sun and focus their energy on a barrel of oil way up high in the sky. And the barrel of oil then heats water and steam, and they make electricity. Last time I looked, I think they had 350,000 mirrors. And in the movie, they have Arnold Schwarzenegger announcing the opening of Ivanpah a few years ago. He was still governor when it opened. And he said, "We are now mining the desert for energy." Well, it may already be shut down. In fact, Will, did you tell me it was shut down last night? It is shut down. Okay. In the movie, they went out there and found that about 20% of all the mirrors were broken. And it was still operating, but barely. But it was $2 billion of your money. It was all tax money, really, that built it. And the most interesting thing is, how do you think they got the mirrors operating and moving with the sun? They needed electricity from natural gas to operate the solar plant. I mean, it's crazy. Now, Apple announced a few years ago that they were going all renewable energy. All of Apple will operate on wind and solar. After 2 years, they gave up and said they misjudged the situation. And so they're not doing it anymore. But Amazon is following suit. Is there anyone here who has not seen a commercial on TV of a field of wind turbines promoting the fact that Amazon will be all renewable, I think, by 2024? If you haven't seen it, okay. Well, it's good that you haven't seen it. It means you don't watch much TV, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's generally a waste of time. I watch TV, but no news. We live in a no-news house. In fact, after 50 years, I just canceled my subscription to the Wall Street Journal, which is no longer a conservative newspaper. I haven't gotten anything out of it in 6 months. Finally, my wife said, for $29 a month, let's get rid of it. And I said, I'm for that. And we did. But Amazon is bound and determined to run their company on when it can't be done. There is my optimism. It can only be failure after failure. Anybody here from Seattle? Any hockey fans here? Okay. Seattle has a new hockey team. After a year of running contests, it's called the Seattle Crackers. I don't know what that means. I'm thinking it alludes to chiropractors because they're often called crackers. And hockey players need a lot of crackers. Trust me, I've played 70 years of competitive hockey. Well, guess what Amazon has named the new arena? Well, it's an old arena that they've put $900 million into refurbishing. It's called the Climate Promise Arena. The Seattle Cracker hockey team is going to be playing in the Climate Promise Arena. I'm happy to say I don't think that name will last more than 4 years when they become a total failure. And of course, they're going to run the entire arena on renewable energy. Now, I know a lot about ice because I've been skating my whole life. And you can't let it costs a lot of money to freeze ice. And you can't let that ice go a couple degrees below optimum before they can't skate. I mean, they're falling down. That's my optimism. I'm so excited about looking forward to their failure. I think the word is schadenfreude. You know that word? It's gaining joy from other people's misery. And the Climate Promise Arena is going to be a joy for me to watch. Now, thank you. The most exciting thing, you got to watch this movie. You got to watch this movie. There is a 2-minute segment in the movie that is the best 2 minutes of film I have ever seen in my life. And here's what Moore's financing of Jeff Gibbs' movie did. In 2 minutes, you see the production of all the materials that are needed for solar and wind. You see the mining of silver, cobalt, graphite, coal, tin, steel, concrete, sulfur hexafluoride, copper, lithium, tin, gallium arsenide, the operation of the smelters, the movement of ships and trucks, and the construction sites where solar arrays and wind turbines rise from the ground. It is the most amazing. You would think your brain can't get around that much action in 2 minutes, but you can. And you will if you take the time to watch it, and I can't recognize it too highly. Now, the newest, biggest solar farm in America is going up 30 miles from this room in the Mojave Desert on 7,100 acres of federal land, which our government gave approval to 2 months ago. It's called the Gemini Project, and it's supposed to cost $1 billion. It's going to produce supposedly 690 megawatts, 900 jobs, and support 26,000 homes in Las Vegas. And here is another optimistic prediction. It will never be finished. It will never contribute anything to the people of Las Vegas except the cost of their electric bills when they spend gobs of money to somehow get electricity out of it. Now, what is different about it than any other solar farm, it's going to be 100% backed up with lithium ion batteries, 100%. Have you been on an airplane lately? Did they ask you if they had any lithium ion batteries in your baggage or whatever? You're probably aware of the number of planes that have caught fire, or inside planes because the batteries catch fire. Well, I ran the numbers on batteries to support 690 megawatts, and I came out with 13,000 tons of lithium-ion batteries. And it was a fairly simple calculation to find out that if those batteries exploded, the explosion would be the equivalent to 1,300 tons of TNT. To compare that to our bomb at Hiroshima in 1945, that was 21,000 tons. So this would be more in the order of a tenth of Hiroshima, but it's still 30 miles from Las Vegas. And I can't imagine how easy it would be to set them on fire. The safety, the security is crazy. Now, what are the batteries composed of? I'm guessing that not a one of you here understands the Tesla battery that supports their expensive car. You'll be surprised to know it's made up of 8,200 AA-sized batteries. I mean, it's nothing new. They're tiny little batteries. They're a little bigger than a AA, 8,200 of them, packed in a container that is in the car or under the car. It's 7 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 7 inches thick. And we calculated they need 60,000 of them. 60,000 Tesla batteries. The Tesla battery right now produces 102 kilowatt hours. Now, Warren Buffett is behind this whole thing. He signed a contract with the powers that be, and I guess the federal government is in it, to buy the electric power from this solar installation at 4 cents a kilowatt hour for the next 25 years. Yeah. I guess, and resell it to in Las Vegas for 30 cents or whatever. It's astounding to me, but I've seen the contract. He'll make an absolute fortune. I've also calculated, and I'm about to end, and hope we have a couple more optimistic questions. You can challenge my optimism. I've run the numbers on the replacement of the batteries, because they're only good for about 3.5 years. The security on the system over about a 10-year life of the whole thing. And their calculation of 1 billion on my scratch paper comes out to 8 billion. This plan is never going to be completed in my mind. If it is going to be one of the biggest solar disasters. You all remember Solyndra. Your tax money gave them $541 million to build a solar factory that makes solar cells that went bankrupt, and it's a long list of those kind of things. This could be the biggest ever, and because it's in Las Vegas, you're going to be reading about it in the coming years, and that's what's going to happen. Well, for that $8 billion, they could put up a nuclear plant that would produce 4 times the 690 kilowatt hours. And it's unfortunate that nuclear plant would also cost $8 billion because of all the regulations and unnecessary safety. And, a plant that could have been built for $3 billion 20 years ago now costs $8 billion. But that would be a smarter thing to do. So my bottom line is that playing out around us, if Trump was to lose and the bad guys get in, the miserable bad guys, and they are all miserable. And I'll tell you a 1-minute story that I love telling. A true story. It happened 2 years ago at a dinner party when I was sitting at a round table, just like all of you are, that had 8 chairs in it. And it was a mixed political group, and it was actually a Christmas party. And I got in a conversation with a fellow on the other side of the table that was conservative as me, and one of us said that we had never seen a happy-go-lucky, upbeat liberal. A woman got up from the table and started screaming at us that she was a happy-go-lucky, upbeat liberal. We rested our case. Thank you all, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Just a quick note. We don't have a lot of time for questions, but if you are in the other room and want to ask a question, please come over and ask a question over here. I think there was some confusion about that. You're welcome from the other room to come over here and ask.
And I will be here actually
I think maybe we need
till we adjourn tomorrow night at 5, so
we need
feel
to take,
free.
2 questions here, and then
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Well, this is just more of a comment. It's ironic that Las Vegas, which has Hoover Dam or Boulder Dam, whatever you want to call it over there, that produces electricity almost dirt cheap. And that's why all these neon lights can go on in this city, has chosen to go with an impossible quest.
I think the people in Las Vegas had nothing to do with it, but they're going to scream the loudest. This is going to be fun to watch. It really is.
Dr. Lehr, I'll play the devil's advocate just with regard to one of the things that you said. Tucson Electric Power in Tucson, Arizona, is doing some of the things exactly you described with having fossil fuel backup for renewables, wind, and solar. The way they claim that they're beating it is that they've got a system where they have internal combustion engines that are natural gas fired, and they leave them idle, but they have to keep them hot so they can start up quickly. And they, if I remember correctly, I'm running on memory here, they run at about 5% of their rated power output when they're in the idle state, and that's how they manage to actually get usable energy.
That's patently absurd. You cannot idle 5% and come on in seconds at 100%. So their numbers are wrong, but you know they are out in the desert and they have sunshine, and they will not succeed, but they might not do near as bad as the situation with it's called the Genesis Power Plant in the Mojave Desert. That's the name of it you'll be reading about. But they're probably partially right, but they can't, that number is absurd.
They're building a lot of them.
Yep.
So, thank you.
We'll all wait and see. And as I said, my enjoyment if we lose the election November 3rd will be one Schadenfreude situation after another in the coming years.
Just a mild correction. I'm from Seattle. The hockey team is called the Kraken, as in the
I said
mythical sea
crackers.
monster.
It's the Kraken.
Well,
okay.
The second point is that the Jokers are already calling them the Crackers.
Okay.
And the arena is nicknamed the Cracker Box.
The Cracker Box. Okay. Well, that works. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay. Thanks again. We're off.